Hello and welcome back to a new video. If you're new here, my name is Tasmin and today we're diving into another episode of Growing Roots. This is a little series here on my channel where I talk about the media that I consume. Everything from books to podcasts to movies and series that I saw. I try to consume media with a lot more intention these days. And yeah, this is a little bit of my wrap up. Before we dive into the things that I consumed, first of all, let's look at what I created lately, besides my videos here on YouTube, which you can see if you click on my account. I don't have a lot to show actually lately. There's a lot of stuff happening and I'm working a lot, but there's not much that I can show to other people. But yeah, first of all, on Fiverr, I got accepted to a pro status. So if you need a freelance writer, I'm now a Fiverr pro seller, which is really cool. And also I am a volunteer at Rewriting Extinction. I wanted to talk about Rewriting Extinction anyway in Growing Roots, but nowadays, since a couple of weeks, months, I think it's actually months at this point, I am a volunteer for them and I'm working for them as a writer, and on their homepage you will find some articles from me, and some of the written things of Rewriting Extinction are now from me, which is very cool and I'm very proud of it because I really love the concept of Rewriting Extinction. It is basically a 12-month campaign to raise funds and raise awareness for different issues with the loss of biodiversity and climate change that are happening right now. The funds that are collected are distributed to 7 different projects from different organizations that are all achievable in this 12-month period if the campaign is successful, which I think is very interesting because it really focuses on direct action right now, today. And raising awareness, they do that by releasing comics. You might have noticed, if you're anywhere on Instagram and you follow comics, that you will see a lot more climate aware comics, comics that talk more about issues with climate change, issues with biodiversity, issues with sustainability. And not all of them are related to Rewriting Extinction, but a lot of them are. And they actually released the most important comic book on Earth, which I don't have yet. I still need to buy that one. And yeah, I think it's a very cool campaign and I love working for them. The team behind it is also so genuine and so lovely. And yeah, I work for them now. And even if I wouldn't, I am just a big fan of what they're doing. The first category, as always, is reading. And today I have, again, 2 books that I would like to mention. You saw in a couple of my last videos some other books that I read recently, so I'm not going into detail about every book that I read. I never do in Growing Roots, but 2 books that I wanted to specifically mention today are, first up, Loving Reaper, which is again a comic book. Comics are getting into my life at the moment. And it is a wonderful comic book that deals with death. And I actually don't own it. I actually read it at a friend's place. It was in the very beginning of November. I was at a friend's house. I had a few hours to spend by myself and I saw this book laying there because my friend is a huge fan of the artist and it's such a beautiful book. And I love the artist too. So I just it was laying in front of me and I just picked it up and I read it in one sitting. And it's just lovely. I love the artist, and if you know the artist or if you know it or if you just look for something that deals a little bit with grief and with death and with animals, then this is definitely for you. The next book also deals with death, but with death I mean genocide. And the book is The Chief Witness. And wow, oh wow, I think I read this in October if I'm not mistaken. Wow, just I don't have words for this book. In my notes it's literally blank because I don't have any words to describe this. This is an account of a survivor of the genocide that is currently happening in West China, with the people from Central Asia, mostly Uyghurs. I never know how to pronounce that in English, I'm sorry. I always say the German word. And other people like from Kazakhstan and so on and so forth, like the different cultures from Central Asia that live on Chinese territory. And China is currently performing a massive genocide. And this might sound a little bit weird, but as someone who's from Germany, I'm very used to read accounts about genocide because we talk a lot about Nazi Germany in school. So we visited concentration camps and we learned about a lot about the history, and like we hear accounts from survivors. So I know how horrifying a genocide is and how concentration camps work. But reading this book, I might even go ahead and say it's worse than what happened last century in Germany. Because wow, just wow, wow, wow. It's so cruel. If you are in any way sensitive or easily triggered, I'm glad that I was in a good mental health state when I was reading this book. Don't pick it up, but otherwise, please read this book. This is an incredible account, and it's so important to know what's going on. Because we kind of all know it, that it's happening, but none of us are actually informing ourselves about it because we kind of don't care, I feel like. And that makes me so sad because like people are to this day judging Germany, and rightfully so, for what happened. But that something like this, or something that might even be worse than this, is happening right in this second, somehow nobody cares about, and I don't understand. And it broke my heart so many times, and it was so hard to read. So hard to read. But it's such an important book. It's so important, and I'm so grateful for the author for taking the risk and publishing this, because wow, just wow. If you're from Germany, by the way, this book was originally published in German, and you can buy the German edition if you want to read it. The next category is listening, and this one will be a little bit more lighthearted than the book category this time. The first thing that I would like to share is a podcast episode, which was a cooperation of Peter Wohlleben, which is one of my favorite authors, and Brigitte B. Green. This is a German podcast episode, so not an English one, I'm sorry. And this talks about if it makes sense to plant trees, because so many times you see like companies advertising that like, oh yeah, you flew anywhere by airplane, just plant 5 trees and it's gonna be all right. Or like you have donation actions where people plant trees, or like people will tell you, yeah, I did that, but I planted trees. And it talks about if that makes a lot of sense. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. It doesn't in the way that it is currently done. Of course, planting trees always makes sense. It's always something that is good to be done. Like if you're planting a tree in your backyard, that's amazing, that's great. But in the way this whole marketing of buying yourself free from sin, it's like a little bit like in the Middle Ages if we think about it, doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is basically the summary, but they go into a lot more detail why that is the case and what to do instead, and so on and so forth. So this is really like a deep dive into that topic, and I really loved it. And it wouldn't be a Growing Roots episode without a recommendation for the For the Wild podcast. Oh god, by now it's embarrassing, but their podcast is just so good, and it is one of the only podcasts that I religiously listen to. And yeah, it's from the For the Wild podcast, and this time I'm talking about the episode Being Humbled by Sharks, which talks about the hunting for sharks and the complex business that is surrounding it, like why it's happening, how it's happening, where it's happening, what we can do. And it was really touching, and I really loved it because I've gotten deeper into shark finning lately, into the topic, since I watched Seaspiracy and learned about it. Even though I don't really recommend Seaspiracy as a documentary anymore, but it like opened the door for me to learn more about finning. because it started a lot of conversations here on the island with people in real life, and started, for me personally, a history of research and getting deeper into the topic. And this podcast episode was one of those educational things, and it was really, really well done. So if you care at all about sharks or the ocean and bycatch and things like that, please listen to this episode. It was really good. And also, please don't forget, if you are a EU citizen or a European citizen, please sign the petition to stop finning in European waters. I will leave it linked down below. And finally, I have a song, which I cannot properly pronounce. I will say La Llorona, but I know it's wrong. I know you pronounce it differently. I'm gonna leave the title and the artist here because I don't want to butcher it too much. And this is such a beautiful version of this song, and this is such a beautiful video as well. It's like a dance with death, and it's so beautiful, and I had it on repeat for like a full afternoon because it was so beautiful. And yeah, I just wanted to share some beauty with you. And the next category is watching. Today, this category is actually quite long, to my own surprise. And the first thing is a YouTube video by one of my favorite channels out there, which is TheAnatomyofWaves. She makes a lot of amazing videos about climate activism, sustainability, that kind of stuff. Not how to be more sustainable, it's more like it's a little bit like video essays, kind of. That's more like the style that she's into. She originally came from BookTube, so she still talks a lot about books regarding these topics, but also a lot of like video essays, thoughts about the topics, and like a little bit of explanation as well. And yeah, it's more almost like a podcast. Like, it's not like that you see like crazy visuals that you're like glued to your like to the screen, but it's very thought-provoking, and I really appreciate these type of videos that she does. And I recommend pretty much all of her videos, but the one that I specifically chose for today's episode is The Rise of Anti-Work, a discussion about work and deployment. And as you might remember from my last Growing Roots episode, this is a topic that has been on my mind a lot lately, and something that I've been like getting into myself. And her video was really also something that gave me a foundation. I mean, I was already into the topic, but it still gave me like the foundation that I needed to move forward with, yeah, getting into the topic. And it really explains the movement of anti-work and why it exists and why it's important and where to go from here, and the distinction between deployment and actual labor and things like this. And it's very interesting, and I think it's a good foundation. If you are interested why people suddenly are like against working, or why you see all these videos titled like I don't dream of labor, like I don't have a dream job, I don't dream of working. If you see that floating around and you've been curious, this video is a great foundation. The next thing is a little YouTube video slash YouTube class, and that is Bernardine Evaristo on writing. I've watched this actually a while ago, but I completely forgot to include it in my last Growing Roots episode. And it was really interesting. It was a very interesting insight on her writing process and the way she writes. She gives some writing advice. So if you are an author or a writer, I highly recommend this video. Besides the fact that it talks a lot about like different paths to success and different definitions of success as a writer, it also talks about how much harder it is for people of color, especially Black people, to get published in the industry. And I really appreciated that perspective as well. Next up is a series on Netflix called Nola Darling, or She's Gotta Have It. And this series has, I think, 2 or 3 seasons. It's been a while, I'm sorry. I binge watched every episode and unfortunately the series got cancelled because Netflix always cancels the best shows on their platform. It's really annoying. But anyway, this is a very creative series about how it's like being Black in the US. It talks about gentrification. it talks about social justice, it talks about the life of an artist, and it's cinematographically very creative and very well done. The actors are also absolutely incredible. Like, the interactions that they have with each other feel so genuine and authentic. And the series also talks a lot about sexuality, being queer, polyamory, things like that, and feminism, and owning up to your own mistakes, and honoring your own boundaries, and being imperfect, and standing to that imperfection, and admitting when you're wrong, and growing from your own mistakes. It has a lot of topics, and it's very well done. I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm so sad they canceled it. But if you are a fan of Dear White People, for example, I highly recommend this one. These two go together really, really well. Then, of course, season 3 of Sex Education. Such a good series, and it doesn't disappoint. I just loved every season so far, and I don't think I need to explain to you guys what it's about. I think it's like such a beloved series, but it definitely deserves its spot in this list today. Even though I have to say season 3, if I had to choose, was my least favorite so far. I think it was a bit all over the place. I think some things felt a little bit forced, but overall it was very interesting to get to know a little bit more of the background stories of people, and to really showcase how life can be so messy sometimes, but it's always so worth it. And finally, I have a little series shout out, which is definitely not something that I intentionally consumed, but I binge watched it yesterday and I loved it, so I had to mention it because it just brought me so much joy. And that is The School of Chocolate. This is like a reality TV competition about chocolatiers and pastry chefs who learn like the next level of being a chocolatier from one of the best, or the best out there. And it was so well done. I'm not a huge fan of reality TV. I sometimes watch a little bit of it as escapism, but in general, it's not something that catches my attention. It's often so problematic, and even competition shows are often like, it's very like staged and forced, and I'm not like in general a huge fan. There are a few exceptions, and this is definitely one of those exceptions, because this felt really nice, very authentic, and it was like not so highly focused on the competition part. It was very much also an educational process. For example, nobody gets eliminated, which I loved actually. In the beginning, I was a little bit confused, but then I was like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, because this is a school. It's the school of chocolate. People are there to learn and to improve, and how are they going to do it if they're like kicked out just because they made a mistake in the beginning? And it's very, it shows you how harsh this industry can be, but it also shows you genuine support within like those people of the show, which was a very nice combination to see. It was very entertaining, I found personally. And you get so hungry for chocolate, which is so bad because chocolate is so unsustainable. That's why I'm saying it's not very intentional for me, because chocolate is one of the most unsustainable things that you can have. And of course, the amount of chocolate that was used in this show and the amount of chocolate that I wanted to eat watching this show were, yeah, something else. So that's the only downside that I have, but that is not necessarily the show. That is just the way the product is produced. So yeah, that's just like a side comment, but I really, really enjoyed the show. And I really hope there are going to be a lot more seasons, because I want to see more. We are at the end of the video, and therefore we are at my shout out for this Growing Roots episode, and that is Maddie. And Maddie is one of my favorite YouTube channels I ever found in this wild, wild world of the internet. Her content is so amazing and she is so incredible, and I love it so much. She, I don't know how she would like to describe herself as, which I don't know if she has ever talked about this, but like, let's just say she doesn't fit the skinny beauty standard in the slightest. But she's absolutely beautiful because of it. And even without it, like, she's just beautiful inside and out. And she's so sexy, and she talks about being confident and loving yourself and adult fun time. And like, she does a lot of incredible content, a lot of video essays, a lot about, you know, her own story, and a lot about really self-love and things like this. And I really, really appreciate her content because we need it. We need it so desperately. Her videos are so insightful and funny, and it made me so much more confident in my feminism and in the way I see myself, and in the way I present for myself, in the way I honor my boundaries, and in the way I honor the things that I would like and that I want in any level of my life. And she really teaches you the message that everybody is deserving of love, no matter how their body looks or what their story is. Like, everybody is deserving of love, and first and foremost, love from themselves for themselves. And I really, really, really recommend her channel to you guys out there. But if you're going to hate on her, I'm gonna hunt you down, just so you know. That is it. I cannot make a short video for the life of me. I literally got cut off by my camera because the card was full when I said goodbye. I just cannot make short videos. I'm sorry. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you got like some kind of recommendation out of it. And I hope you have a fantastic day, and see you again next week. Bye!